Good afternoon and welcome to the Midday News. Here's what we have in the bulletin. Police officers raised concerns about states of emergency, double St. Mary community, and later is in trouble on day 2 of first test against. I'm Vashon Brown. Here are the details. The Police Federation is this afternoon raising concerns about the welfare of its members operating in the states of emergency. Among other things, the cops are concerned about a lack of resources. Javon Keys reports.
It's been 8 days since Prime Minister Andrew Holness declared states of public emergency in 7 police divisions across the island. And already, there are echoes of distress among some officers on the front line. According to the chairman of the Police Federation, Corporal Rohan James, a lack of resources continues to be a problem.
What we have found is that our employer, the government, has failed to provide all the requisite support to enable the members to continue to give service in a condition that we believe that it is more adverse now than ever before.
Corporal James says changes must be made to the long hours members of the JCF are stationed at a checkpoint under the SOE without release. This while he says members of the Jamaica Defence Force are rotated every 4 hours.
There are some fundamental changes that are required if we are supposed to sustain health and well-being. We cannot continue to operate the human being as a machine.
Police officers are now even more concerned that wage talks have not been settled. Yet, they are being asked to spend extra hours because of the states of emergency. Former Deputy Commissioner of Police Novlet Grant says the police should be paid better.
And if you strip it down to its barest minimum of just somewhere to live, basic utility of light, water, and cooking gas and food and so on, you realize that they are in a dire strait. They are in seriously dire strait.
In the meantime, the Federation head is again calling for the government to do more as it relates to the welfare of its members.
When they do get a meal, it's sometimes very cold, salmonella bacteria starts to chip in, and you see flies hanging around. Cannot continue.
Javon Keys, TVJ News.
The police are investigating the shooting death of 2 men in Moore Hall, Islington, St. Mary. The double murder happened on Sunday. The men have been identified as 35-year-old Marvin Collins and 34-year-old Peter Finlay, both from Waterford, Portmore, St. Catherine. The police say about 12:30 a.m. on Sunday, Collins and Finlay boarded a motor vehicle along with 4 other persons. 2 men subsequently approached the right side of the vehicle and opened gunfire in the direction of the now deceased men. Both men received multiple gunshot wounds to the head and the upper body. Now, the other people in the vehicle were not injured. Collins and Finlay were taken to the hospital where they were pronounced dead. And the Clarendon Police and the Independent Commission of Investigations, INDICOM, are piecing together the series of events that led to 1 man being shot dead by the police in Freetown and a break-in at a shop close by. According to the police, the shooting happened sometime after 3 this morning, but reports are that not too long before, men were observed taking goods from a shop and loading them into a car. Assistant Superintendent Eugene Downer says there's not much information at this time. Amidst the declaration of several states of emergency across the island, the Spring Village community in St. Catherine has launched its own initiative to control crime. It follows the recent double murder of senior citizens in the community. Kalisha Williams has that story.
When 2 senior citizens are killed in a community that has not recorded a single murder in decades, it leads to a state of shock and fear. Well, at least that's how residents of Spring Village in Old Harbour, St. Catherine feel. It's been over 2 weeks now since the bodies of 2 sisters, 76-year-old Lola Lewis and 69-year-old Christine Lewis, were found in this house with their throats slashed. And the residents have been taking the incident hard.
It's very tense. It is.
Or tense it is. Persons afraid to,
Persons are scared to walk around, that's one, because once it reach even 6, going to 7, persons are scared. They try to come off the streets.
I can understand why that sense of fear would grip some people to say if it could happen to Justice Christine, chances are it could happen to anybody.
Murders have been on the rise island-wide. So on Thursday, days after the government declared 7 states of public emergency in the island, stakeholders in Spring Village launched their own security measure, Team Stop the Violence.
The team came in solidarity, the police and citizens and other stakeholders, you know, trying to ensure that this never happen again.
The operation will continue over the next few weeks, but unlike the SOEs, there won't be a cordon or search. It's more about strengthening the relationship between residents and the police.
My commanding officer is here also, Superintendent Phillips from the St. Catherine South Division, and is leading the aspect of the citizens coming together in peace and unity. And it's going very well. We are satisfied with reception so far. And every week we'll be doing this based on the organizer of this Stop the Violence in this community.
So now residents are hoping that calm will once again prevail in the community. As for the double murder, the police said several persons have since been arrested. However, only one person remains in custody. But they are still hopeful that there will be a breakthrough in the case soon. Kalisha Williams, TVJ News.
Meanwhile, the opposition is again blasting the government for not having a plan to tackle crime across the country. On November 14, Prime Minister Andrew Holness announced the imposition of states of emergency in 7 police divisions to stem the high numbers of homicides in those areas. But speaking during a tour of St. Catherine on Saturday, opposition leader Mark Golding said the SOEs show the ineffectiveness of the government to tackle crime.
North St. Catherine Division, which is where some of the more notorious gangs come from and so on, they have been able to get a solid decline in murders. And it just shows you that when you have proper policing with a plan which is well executed, you don't need any state of emergency to get results. And I think the state of emergency is really just a pretext for the Prime Minister to try and look like he's doing something because he doesn't know what to do. And the truth is that we need a proper, well-executed strategy for dealing with national security in the country. The JLP is not doing that. And the PNP has a much better plan because it's a balanced plan that invests in the youth and tries to get to the root causes of why we have such violent crime in the country so we can have a sustainable and long-term benefit.
And Mr. Golding is also calling for an improvement in fringe benefits for rank-and-file members of the Jamaica Constabulary Force.
Well, I'm very sympathetic to them, the police at this time in particular. They're owed some money, some back money for many years, which they haven't been paid. And you know, these states of emergency really put them through grueling conditions. Yeah. And they don't get any kind of additional benefits for it, as far as I know. And they feel that that's unfair, and I agree with them.
The opposition leader is on a tour of the island as the party ramps up its machinery for the local government elections due in February next year. And it's now time for a break, but please stay with us. More stories when we return. Welcome back to the Midday News. We need help in protecting our beaches, the cry of at least one environmentalist in Portland who is bemoaning the rampant acts of sand stealing from the Winifred Beach in the parish. As you'll hear in this report from O'Shane Masters, the authorities are being called on to provide greater oversight.
Residents in Portland are calling for the authorities to help them stop the stealing of sand from one of the beaches in the parish. They say it is causing harm not only to the beach, but to other creatures such as turtles. Environmentalist Dr. Janet Holden says she has witnessed people on numerous occasions taking the sand. This has been a recurring issue for majority of the island's beaches. She now says it must stop.
A lot of people blame it on climate change, which is having an effect, but I've been taking photographs and I know that in the last 2 years there is a huge amount of sand going, and in fact I've seen people stealing sand and everybody in the local district sort of knows who it is.
She says wildlife is also being affected.
And also where the turtles used to nest, there's very little sand left now for them to, I don't even know if they're nesting there this season. So I think it would be really good, you know, to have a proper ecological survey of what there is now and what can be done to preserve it.
The concern came up following a stakeholders session at the Winifred Beach, which is slated to undergo some upgrading work by the Tourism Enhancement Fund. But that too has been shrouded in its own controversy, as residents say the tender process has not been transparent. At the meeting, one resident claimed that persons who applied early in the tender process had their applications cancelled without the requisite notice.
It seems to me that it is a way to exclude certain persons out of the arrangement, which I think is really unacceptable.
But Executive Director of the TEF, Kerry Wallace, says the session was not the place to divulge that information. He noted that a website will be established where all the details will be published for the pending development. In the meantime, Dr. Holden believes that residents should be at the center of the project in giving their input. It's a point Principal Architect at Cut Works Architecture, David Cuthbert, agrees with.
For us, it's a fact-finding mission. It's really a chance to find out what it is that you think should in the first part, but also shouldn't be at Winifred. You are the ones who are going to help define it as a space, as a place of memory, as something that is significant. Much like Darrow Flynn Marina is right now, it needs to become something that is memorable to the entire consciousness of all residents of Portland and specifically, everyone of Jamaica.
O'Shane Masters, TVJ News.
As the Christmas season approaches, a rush to prevent a further increase in the number of road fatalities. TVJ News spoke with the Vice Chairman of the National Road Safety Council, Dr. Lucian Jones. As of yesterday, the number of people killed as a result of road traffic crashes stood at 402. And with less than 2 months to go before the end of the year, the annual cry from road safety officials.
The National Road Safety Council continues to sound the alarm about the increase in number of road deaths on the nation's roads. This is a matter that we have been addressing for the last 6 months, especially in the light of the projections from the Mona Geoinformatics Center.
The center has predicted that the island could see up to 450 road traffic deaths for the year if nothing dramatic happens to curb the crashes.
And we have not had any dramatic intervention for several reasons. Perhaps the most important of which is the long overdue implementation of the Road Traffic Act, which from the news that we have heard recently, it would appear that a conclusion to the matter is on the horizon. And hopefully we will get some good news before year end.
Dr. Lucian Jones says by the end of this month, there should also be significant improvements to the traffic ticketing system.
The other issues which await interventions and which are urgent is the request for dedicated funding to the National Road Safety Council, some of which we could use for alerting people to the dangers inherent in the Christmas period, where people become very busy, they become a little lax, they don't follow instructions on roads as careful as they ought to. People drink and drive, and people move about at night time. And these things, plus the speeding, increase the propensity for road deaths and injuries.
Dr. Jones says the NRSC is hoping that 2022 will be a better year for road safety. The COVID-19 positivity rate has declined in the last 24 hours by 4.6%. The positivity rate is 7.5%. 102 new COVID-19 cases were reported from 2,008 test samples on Sunday. This has increased the overall case count to 90,807. According to the Ministry of Health, 190 people remain hospitalized with the virus. 7 patients are in critical condition, while 17 are severely ill. In the last 2 weeks, 894 active cases have been confirmed on the island. Meanwhile, 1 more person has died from COVID-19, pushing the death toll to 2,359. The country's overall recovery rate has increased to 61,836 as 116 more people have recovered from the respiratory illness. For the latest in the financial world, here's Cody and Barrett.
In the world of business, The Senate has approved the International Corporate and Trust Services Providers Change of Name and Amendment Act. The legislation seeks to amend the International Corporate and Trust Services Providers Act. The principal act seems to regulate international trust and corporate service providers to prevent the misuse of these business arrangements as vehicles for illicit activities such as money laundering and terrorism financing. And in business internationally, U.S. Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell has been nominated for a second term by President Joe Biden. Mr. Powell is set to stay in the role, which includes managing inflation and regulating the financial system for a further 4 years. He was initially appointed by former President Donald Trump and started his first term in 2018. The 68-year-old Republican has been praised for his management of the U.S. economy during the pandemic. And that's it for the Business Minute. I'm Cody Ann Barrett.
For the top regional and international stories, here's Sandy Williams.
In regional news, a special reserve police officer and a member of the Trinidad and Tobago Coast Guard were among several people killed during a bloody weekend in the Twin Island Republic. The murder toll has now inched closer to 400 this year. Last year, the murder toll was 340. Police confirmed that Coast Guardsman Jabari Francois and Special Reserve Police Officer Joe McGolston shot and killed each other in Diego Martin during a fracas on Sunday, apparently over a woman. On the international scene, Austria is now under a nationwide lockdown for the next 20 days. People, vaccinated or not, can only go out for essential reasons such as getting food, going to work, or going to school. The lockdown comes after a surge in coronavirus cases across the country.
The government here is blaming the unvaccinated for the rising infection rates. About 1 in 3 Austrians has yet to be immunized despite being eligible. That's why Austria's chancellor wants to see restrictions that specifically target the unvaccinated in this country. So even when this nationwide lockdown is lifted, the unvaccinated will still have to live under these restrictions until they're immunized.
And those were the top regional and international stories. I'm Sandy Williams.
We now head to a quick break, but Simon Preston is standing by with your midday sports report.
Welcome back. It's now time for Midday Sports. I'm Simon Preston. West Indies captain Craig Brathwaite says he's hopeful his side can come into day 3 with a better batting performance. The West Indies were wobbling at 113 for 6 at stumps on day 2 of the first test against Sri Lanka in Galle. They trailed Sri Lanka by 273 runs. Kyle Mayers and Jason Holder were at the crease at the close of play on a 22 and 1 respectively. Ramesh Mendes took 3 for 23 for the home side.
Well, I mean, obviously Shea a little unlucky. Obviously our spinner bought some good balls. But I mean, obviously we'll sit and still review, how we could, obviously better, especially our spinner who got 30 scalps today. But, the guys obviously to come, looking forward to each challenge. It won't be easy, but we just got to keep supporting.
And just personally, a little bit about your innings.
Well, it felt good, obviously disappointed, got to start and then go on. So, next time obviously got to make up for that.
Earlier, Sri Lanka, who began the day on 267 for 3, were bowled out for 386. Skipper Dimuth Karunaratne top scored with 147. Roston Chase was the pick of the bowlers for the Caribbean side with 5 for 83, while Jamel Warrican took 3 for 87. Shannon Gabriel took 2 for 69. Day 3 action bowls off at 11:30 p.m. Jamaica time. To football we go now, as the Reggae Boys have risen 2 places in the November edition of the FIFA World Rankings. The Jamaicans moved from 59th to 57th after back-to-back 1-1 draws against El Salvador and the United States in the CONCACAF World Cup qualifiers earlier this month. Jamaica remains 5th in CONCACAF behind the United States, Mexico, Canada and Costa Rica. Jamaica also remains number 1 in the Caribbean. The Reggae Boys will next be in action on January 27 against Mexico at the National Stadium. The top 10 ranked teams in the world reads Belgium, Brazil, France, England, Argentina, Italy, Spain, Portugal, Denmark and the Netherlands. Reggae girl Tiffany Cameron scored a double for Hungarian club FC Yor as they thamed Saraksar 6-0 over the weekend. Cameron scored her 2-timer in the first half to take her tally to 6 goals for the season. She has now tallied 6 goals and 2 assists in 8 games this campaign. The victory also keeps FC Yor in second position in the Hungarian top flight. Cameron was a member of Jamaica's squad at the 2019 FIFA Women's World Cup in France. And finally this afternoon, England manager Gareth Southgate has signed a new contract to keep him in the role until December 2024. Southgate, whose previous contract was set to run out after the 2022 World Cup in Qatar, has been manager of the national side since November 2016. He led England to the final of the Euro 2020, their best men's performance in 55 years, in July. Southgate initially took over as caretaker manager from Sam Allardyce in September 2016 before being appointed permanently 2 months later. He led England to the World Cup semi-finals for the first time in 28 years in 2018. England have won 44 of their 68 matches under Southgate, with 14 defeats and 10 draws. And that is it for your midday sports report. I'm Simon Preston. Vashon, it's over to you.
All right, thank you so much, Simon. And that's the Midday News. I'm Vashon Brown. Don't forget to join us at 7 for Primetime News Package. On behalf of the news, sports and production teams, have a good afternoon.